Radio 1.
Here's Newsbeat with Claire Bradley in London and Peter Bowes in the United States.
The world's worst terrorist attack devastates New York and hits other targets in North America.
We heard a big bang, and then we saw smoke coming out, and everybody started running out, and we saw the plane on the other side of the building, and there was smoke everywhere, and people are jumping out the windows.
2 planes crashed into the World Trade Towers, causing huge explosions. Both towers have collapsed, throwing debris and ash across Manhattan.
The White House is evacuated as a third plane crashes into the Pentagon in Washington. It's feared hundreds could be dead. The Queen and Tony Blair have sent their condolences.
This mass terrorism is the new evil in our world today.
We'll bring you all the latest on this with reports and eyewitnesses from the scene.
Radio 1 Newsbeat.
This is the moment America was hit by a horrific act of terrorism that may have claimed thousands of lives. In a terrifying sequence of destruction, 2 planes, at least one believed to be hijacked, crashed into the World Trade Center in New York just before 2 p.m. UK time. The building was immediately engulfed in flames. In the 90 minutes that followed, the center's famous Twin Towers collapsed, rocking Manhattan Island and sending people on the ground fleeing for their lives. In a separate attack, an airliner has smashed into the Pentagon in Washington. This man saw the first attack on the World Trade Center in New York.
We look up and we see this big jet, like a 737 or a 7... It was a big jet. Yeah. We saw it come just looking like it's sideways. At first, we thought it was just going to try to miss it. Bang! Right into the middle of it, like around the 70th floor. And then half hour later, we see the second one bang into it.
The attack happened at the peak of the New York rush hour shortly before 9 in the morning.
As I was approaching the subway, the tremendous roar went over my head, and I looked up immediately, and it was a plane much lower than I've ever seen a plane in lower Manhattan.
Everything just all of a sudden just imploded. I ran as fast as I could, went inside of a building about a block away. I stood in the building for a couple of seconds, and then all of a sudden the building started filling up with smoke. I was with a bunch of law enforcement officers. We couldn't get out of the building because everything was locked up.
Witnesses say they saw people jumping from windows in the World Trade Center, which is one of the world's tallest buildings.
See bodies flying out of the sky, and you can't do nothing about it. I mean, my heart's in my mouth. I mean, I pray for these people. There's no words to describe what's going on out there. I mean, you see bodies just coming a half hour later, still coming out of the goddamn sky.
One of the planes that crashed into the building was an American Airlines flight from Boston to Los Angeles. It had 158 people on board.
It just slammed right into it and was completely engulfed by the building. It was extraordinary. Okay. No wings flew off, nothing like that. It just went directly in, creating this sort of cavern-like hole.
And then I came out, and everything was filled with ash, and it looks like I'm in a surreal movie.
It felt like another plane coming. Everybody took cover to run. We ran down the subway, but the dust followed us down there.
It's like rubble and dust, like inches thick, and like paper everywhere, and they just moved us out.
The second attack at the Pentagon, which is the nerve center of America's military machine, caused a second wave of terror in the nation's capital. TV commentators were lost for words at the scale of the devastation.
This is huge. This is huge. The State Department is now being evacuated as a precaution.
All planes in the US have been grounded, and all flights from UK airports to America have been suspended. President Bush heard about the attack while on a visit to Florida.
Today we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
The president said he was returning to Washington to deal with the crisis. This is the most serious attack on America since Pearl Harbor in the Second World War.
I have spoken to the vice president, to the governor of New York, to the director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand.
Prime Minister Tony Blair has sent condolences on behalf of the British people. He said the attacks were obviously the work of fanatics.
This mass terrorism is the new evil in our world today. It is perpetrated by fanatics who are utterly indifferent to the sanctity of human life. And we, the democracies of this world, are going to have to come together to fight it together and eradicate this evil completely from our world.
Well, as America and the rest of the world comes to terms with today's horrific chain of events, President Bush has ordered a full-scale investigation into who committed the carefully coordinated terrorist attacks in New York and Washington. It still isn't clear who's behind them. Earlier today, the Palestinian group, the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, claimed responsibility, but this has since been denied. Here's Newsbeat's Kim Davis.
This organisation says it's got nothing to do with the attacks, despite reports on Abu Dhabi TV. Abdul Bari Atman's an expert on the Middle East. He's convinced a radical Islamic group is responsible. The Islamic extremist Osama bin Laden said to be behind the embassy bombings in Africa and the USA and the attack on the World Trade Center in 1993.
We know that the Osama bin Laden group attacked American destroyer Cole in Aden, attacked American military personnel in Saudi Arabia. 19 of them were killed. So also Osama bin Laden issued a fatwa to attack American wherever they are.
So why would a Palestinian group be involved? Here's our political editor, Polly Billington.
There's supposed to be a peace process going on in the Middle East to sort out the differences between Israel and the Palestinians and to set up a Palestinian state. But that's all gone into reverse because of Israel giving the go-ahead for Jewish settlers to set up home on Palestinian land. Now, Palestinians have fought back with suicide bomb attacks, and then Israel has retaliated again. A lot of Palestinians say Israel wouldn't get away with this and other attacks on them if they didn't have a big mate like the US backing them up.
Zach Sharif is a Palestinian who lives in London.
I can't understand from where they're coming from, especially I've been in Palestine about 3.5 weeks ago. I see the missiling, I see the F-16, the Apaches, how much they're destroying cities and villages.
Some radical Islamic groups say the attacks are a result of the US policy in the Middle East, but the Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat condemned them and offered condolences to President Bush.
We are completely shocked, unbelievable.
Some people in Israel say that bin Laden had in fact warned everyone that America would be hit. The carefully coordinated attacks deliberately centred on the heart of North America. James Rubin is the former Assistant Secretary of State for the US.
Clearly it was well-timed and well-planned, but conducted by the kinds of groups that have only the ability to use cowardly means to kill innocent people by obviously the hundreds, if not more now, to make some political point. I mean, the idea that this is an accident, I think, now is gone with the attacks on the Pentagon. All the symbols of the United States are being attacked.
The former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak says the world must now unite to fight terrorism.
I believe that the world will not be the same place from this evening on. I believe that it's clear now that we have to launch world coordinated struggle against terror wherever it might come.
If bin Laden is responsible, there are fears that Britain could be the next target.
Well, let's get the latest from the scene now. The BBC's Stephen Evans was in the Trade Center when the first plane hit. Stephen, what's the situation now?
New York is chaos now. All the way up Manhattan is chaos. But more to the point, the area around the World Trade Center is also chaos because nobody quite knows the extent of the damage.
How are people reacting?
The feeling is absolutely stunned, numb shock. People simply don't know. A lot of people, when I left the scene about half an hour ago, were simply standing around, nodding their heads in utter disbelief, like the cliched view of these things is. But it's shock. People are in trepidation. A lot of people are thinking, I shouldn't hang around here, I'm getting away.
Steve, there must have been scenes of sheer pandemonium around you.
People aren't saying very much in truth. They were simply staring at each other. Some people had their arms around each other. The word terrorism was used, and I heard one person say, terrorism, well, this is terror. They are absolutely shocked.